Good afternoon, everyone. Please stand for the opening prayer. Head bowed, eyes closed. Dear Lord, I pray that you help us today and help us to have a good program and that it will be edifying to us and that we'll be able to share our knowledge with others. Amen. Please be seated. Our scripture reading is taken from Lamentations 3:22. It says, "It is of the Lord's mercy that we are not consumed, because his compassions fail not. They are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness." AY, stand at attention. All right, we're going to do our aim, motto, and pledge. Aim: the Advent message to all the world in my generation. Motto: the love of Christ compels me. Pledge: loving the Lord Jesus, I promise to take an active part in the youth ministry of the church, doing what I can to help others and finish the work of the gospel in all the world. Song: Adventist youths are we, from every land and sea. Together we pray and work and play in happy harmony. We have a faith to share with others everywhere. A message of love from God above to show the world we care. Adventist youths, Adventist youths, Adventist youths. Stand at ease, you may be seated. All right, today we're going to have a program around breast cancer awareness, and we will be having a presentation by Dr. Robin Perkins.
Hello. Hello, can you hear me? Good. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. It's a pleasure to be with you. I hope to make this an interactive session, okay? Lots of engagement. I talk a lot, so I have to try my best to make this short and succinct. I've been told to talk or engage with you about breast cancer awareness, things to be mindful of. It's a month of October, and as you know, in October, we celebrate breast cancer awareness, yes? Okay. I'll try and keep it short, but like I said, interactive, okay? I've been asked also to give you a little breakdown about who I am. So my name is Dr. Robin Perkins. I am a physician. I work currently at the Valley Polyclinic. I have an interest in GP, so general practice, and internal medicine. So you can find me in both of those clinics at the moment. Some people say they've never seen me here before. That may be true. I've only been here about 4 years. Previous to that, I was living in the UK for 16 years. That's where I studied, trained, and worked. That's where I met my husband, Shamari Kentish. I got married. We've been married 10 years. Wednesday has made 10 years, and now we're here raising our 3 children. So thank you for having me today to speak with you, okay? So first I want to open with what is breast cancer, and generally what is cancer. So cancer occurs when there is a cell. Our bodies are made up of cells. Tissues are made up of cells. So you have cells that are in your liver, cells that are in your breast, cells that would be in your kidneys. And what will happen in cancer is one of these cells becomes rogue. It doesn't want to do what the rest are doing, okay? And that becomes a problem because everything else is doing what the breast tissue should be doing, but this one cell decides, I no longer want to be like you all, I want to do something different. And that's ingrained in the blueprint of each cell, your DNA, okay? So there may be a mutation. You hear that word saying mutation. That's just an error in the DNA, the coding of the cell. And that error in the DNA causes the cell either to not die when it should die, because like life, we live and we die, and our cells live and they die as well. They're actually programmed to die. But sometimes mutation doesn't allow the cell to die when it should. So it goes on living and dividing and proliferating and becomes an abnormal part of that organ. So in that case, the breast. Another thing that may happen is our immune system is meant also to target foreign cells, cells that are behaving badly or not part of us. And what the cancer cell does is that it evades the normal immune checkpoints and allows it to grow in that particular tissue. So for the breast, you can either have a cancer in the duct of the breast, or where the milk passes through, that's called a ductal carcinoma, or you can have a lobular carcinoma where the milk is produced. That's where you can have the majority of cancers. Now, just to give you a bit of statistics about cancer, thank you. 1 in 3 of us at some point in time will get cancer. And most of us know someone who either has had or has cancer, because 1 in 3 of us will get cancer. But cancer these days is something that people die with, not die of. So treatments have advanced, detection and screening has advanced as well, to ensure that either we're detecting it early and therefore the spread is limited, or our treatments or chemotherapy drugs or different hormonal receptor drugs are stronger now, and people are living now and living 20 plus years after having their cancer diagnosis. So people often wonder why. I hear a lot of people getting cancer. Apologies, I go into my Bajan dialect. So tell me if you can't understand me. But persons will wonder, why is it that I know so many people getting cancer? When my grandmother was older, there wasn't so much cancer around. That's 2 reasons. People are living longer, and the longer we live, the more likelihood it is that our cells behave badly, basically, and can form cancer cells. 2, that our cells behave badly. Cancer cells. 2, that it's okay. So number 2, persons who have cancer live longer, yes, and we screen more often, so we detect it more often. So if you screen more often for something, you're likely to find it more often, and screening is a good thing. So I'm going to go on to talk about screening shortly. Now, I gave you a statistics of 1 in 3 persons will get cancer at some point in time in their life. So that's 1/3 of the population will get some sort of cancer. But specifically speaking about breast cancer now, that incidence, so breast cancer, for example, is the most common cancer among Black Caribbean women, yes? But the survival rates are getting better. In the US, skin cancer tends to be the highest incidence there because they're more Caucasian population, but breast cancer is shortly behind that. So it has a very high incidence. So very relevant to know about it, know how to prevent it, and to spread awareness about it. There are quite a few men in the audience. I'm happy about that. So men are not, don't think that you can't get breast cancer either, and tune out or only listen to it in relation to your daughters or your wives or your sisters. Men can get breast cancer as well. And it's important for a man to do what he can to reduce his risk factors for getting breast cancer. And we'll move on to talk about those now, okay? So I'm going to throw it out to you because I said it was going to be interactive. Can anybody tell me what a risk factor might be for cancer? Breast cancer specifically. Well, all cancers kind of fall into the same category. So what would predispose or what would cause somebody to be at increased risk of getting cancer? Yeah, very good. So, oh, the microphone is behind you.
Genetics.
Yes, very good. Genetics. So we spoke earlier about cancer originating from problems within the DNA and problems with coding in the particular cell. So there are certain genes that are responsible for breast cancer, breast and ovarian cancer. And those genes, without going into detail about them, they can predispose you to getting cancer. But not every person who develops breast cancer has a genetic risk factor. We have what you call de novo mutation, so a mutation that happens in a cell just like that, without having any risk factors. So some people will be like, but I don't have anybody in my family with cancer, but why is it me? But you don't have to look at it that way. Sometimes these things just happen without that genetic risk. But if you know if your mother has had cancer, your sister has had cancer, or if you're older and your daughter has been diagnosed with cancer, those are first-degree relatives. If a first-degree relative has had cancer, or if they're a man and they're a first-degree relative and they've had cancer, you know that you're at high risk and you have to screen more often for cancer. Any others? I want 2 more at least. 2 more. I didn't hear it quite. Diet, yes. Diet is another aspect of your risk factors, particularly the ultra-processed foods. So when I say ultra-processed, everybody kind of has chips, very oily foods. So obesity in itself. So poor diet leads to obesity. Obesity leads to cancer, all types of cancer. So important to eat well. The fresher the fruit and the vegetables and your meal, the less processed it is, the better it is for you. And also getting physical activity, so some sort of exercise, and watching your portion sizes, important. And sugar, very good, and sugar. Any others? 1 more at least.
Chemical exposures?
Yes, so certain exposure to some chemicals, yes, can cause, well, cancer, maybe not specifically breast cancer, but yes, all certain types of cancers. So exposure to radiation. So somebody, if they've had radiotherapy to a different type of cancer in their body, say to their neck, they're at higher risk of developing a breast cancer. If they've been exposed for whatever reason to radiation from another source, they're at higher risk of developing breast cancer. I also read an article a few months ago that says that, I don't know how strong the evidence is, but hair dye and hair straightener can contribute to an increased risk of breast cancer, particularly in Black persons. So, like I said, the evidence is varied, but there is some there that says that can happen. All right, so I asked you for 3, so I'll give you the rest. You can hear me okay? Okay. So age, we said as we get older, it increased our risk of developing breast cancer. We talked about genetics, so the family history of breast cancer, a first-degree relative, so that is a mother, a sister, a daughter, or if by chance you have a male relative there who has breast cancer, it means that you have to screen more often for breast cancer. If you've had a previous diagnosis of breast cancer, being overweight or obese, particularly after menopause, can increase your chances of breast cancer. If you've had a previous benign breast lump, you need to do your checks more often because that benign lump can transform and become malignant meaning cancer that can spread later in life. If you use alcohol excessively, then that can lead to cancer. And one that I thought y'all might have said, but I guess here it's not that common, smoking can also increase your risk of cancer. So we talked about the risk factors. I want to move on and talk about what you can do to prevent cancer. So, you know, the saying prevention is better than cure. So what can we do to prevent cancer? So of the list that we went through, I want to kind of break it down into those that we can fix and those that we can't fix. So modifiable and non-modifiable risk factors. So things that I can't change. If I'm 50, I'm not. If I'm 50 and over, then I can't change that. I'm older, so my chance of getting breast cancer would be greater. If my mother had breast cancer, I can't change my genetics. I'm born who I am. I can't change that. I just have to do what I need to do to screen and prevent that. If for some reason I have been exposed to radiotherapy, like I said, if I had a thyroid cancer and radiation was happened to be close to my chest, I can't change that. No, that's something in the past. I can't really change that. But what I could do, if I'm in this non-modifiable category, I can screen more regularly. And we will talk about screening. Screening occurs before you detect anything bad. So screening is there to allow you to find that lump before it becomes a serious thing, yes? So going back over here now to talk about what are the modifiable risk factors. So I'm a little chunky, I'm trying to lose some weight. So losing weight, being physically active, important. Watching my diet, like my friend said, sugary foods, trying to avoid that. I'm gonna plug here too. Sugary foods also means not eating 6 mangoes at a time. Yes? Not eating 10 mangoes at a time. 6 is a problem too. It is natural sweet, but it is sugar. So unless you're eating those mangoes and you're not eating anything else, that is still sugar that your body, if you don't do the physical activity to burn it, it's gonna be there and it's gonna be deposited as fat. So if you eat your 6 mangoes and you turn around and eat a Johnny cake and cheese, that's too much calories for breakfast if you're not gonna go in the ground and plant some yam or something like that, right? Or going, sugar apple season is coming in. So yes, 3 sugar apples, too much sweet. And yes, it is a processed sweet as well. So you don't want to be indulging in sugar, adding too many sugars to your tea. Yes, go ahead.
So if I eat 6 mangoes, then I turn around and eat a whack of salad, that should balance it out, right?
I like that one. So, yes, if that is, well, depending on the size of the mango. So if we're talking about a mango the size of my fist, if you ate that and that was your lunch with a salad, and then you went and you did some physical activity, then fine. And you didn't drink juice and a malt behind it and eat some ice cream for dessert, then I would allow that. But even that is a little bit of a push, but I would turn my eye to that. The notion is to burn off those calories, yes? And we often don't eat 6 mangoes and then that is it. We normally go and eat something else behind it. So that's why I'm just cautioning, if it is that you eat the 6 mangoes, know that that is your meal because each of those mangoes is about 100 calories, yeah? But I digress. So, the modifiables. So, I talked about calorie intake, weight, getting physical activity. If you smoke, not smoking. If you drink alcohol, reducing your alcohol intake. And breastfeeding. Breastfeeding as well for long periods of time helps reduce your risk of developing breast cancer. So moving on, I said these elements increase our risk, but what we need to do is screen more often, or we need to screen, I should say, to ensure that we're catching it. If it's going to develop, we're going to catch it early. So, yes.
Some people will say that the screening may cause you to have breast cancer because it's a painful process, like to do it frequently.
we're going to get to that. Remind me if I don't answer it, okay? All right. So first, before we talk about the screening in detail, we need to know what we're looking for, right? So I'm going to throw it back out to you all. Tell me some signs and symptoms of breast cancer. I want at least 3, and I want a man to answer 1.
I don't know.
A lump?
Yes, very good, very good.
I'm at. That was my answer.
Pain,
The you know how an orange looks?
yes. Peau
That
d'orange, yes.
ripple kind of look.
So skin changes, we'll call that skin changes. Very good. One more. I don't know, the others heard?
You heard me?
I heard you,
Plenty
but did the
pain
others hear?
in your breast.
Yes, pain in the breast. So I got lump, changes to the skin, something called peau d'orange, and pain in the breast itself. So added to that would be an abnormal discharge from the nipple. So obviously if you're breastfeeding, you're expecting breast milk to come from the breast. But if you're not breastfeeding, you're not expecting anything to come from your breast, okay? Unless you have a problem, and you know that you have a problem in the sense of hyprolactin, that's another story. But if you're seeing discharge from your breast and you know you're not breastfeeding, you need to go to the doctor so that you can be evaluated. If you're seeing blood from your nipple, same thing. That's not supposed to be there. Skin changes. So we talked about like how the outside of an orange looks. If you have dimpling, like how the outside of the orange looks on your breast tissue, that's not normal. You need to go and see your doctor about that. If you see what we call tethering, so the skin is puckered, so it pull in a little bit where it should not be pulled in when you look at your breast normally, then that is a problem as well. Any scaliness to your breast, so if you should know what your normal skin on your breast look like. If you see any scaly dryness on it that has never been there before, you should also go and get checked. Anything else? Let's see. Oh, changes in size of the breast. So have they gotten abnormally bigger? Are they now more painful? That prompts you, or if you have felt a lump that is not there before, that prompts you to go now and see your doctor, not to worry, but to see your doctor to get further, to give a further history and to be examined to see what are the next steps. So I don't want anybody to go away anxious from here today. That's the most important part. And I don't want anybody to feel as though, oh, you know, I go home and I examine and I feel something. If you do feel something, best to come to the clinic and we can then talk through the Hello? Yeah, it's working now. Talk through the next steps as to what needs to happen. So, oh, I like this one, it's pink. So don't feel as though you don't have that support, and don't run away and feel like I've given you a lot of information and you can't do anything about it. That's important. All right, so I've talked to you about the signs and the symptoms. Now I want to go on and talk to you about how we screen for them. So part of screening is self-examination, okay? And what is recommended for females is at least once a month. If you're having your period still, about 5 to 7 days after your period starts, try and do it then. There should be less lumps and the breast tissue should be less painful because breast tissue can get sensitive around the time of your period. But try and fix it at that particular time. So if you know that it is the 15th of the month, that is 7 days after your period, try and do it every 15th of the month. moving forward. And men, don't zone out on this one. You advise, you can do it yourselves and also advise your loved ones about doing it as well. So, I went to the beach today, and as I was walking on Crocus Bay, I saw this rock. And I was like, oh. I was like, oh, this looks like a breast. And I was wondering, how am I going to teach you all about self-examination? And then it's like the Lord showed me, I'm like, oh, look at this rock. So, Tiffany, can you hold the mic for me while I... Thank you. So, I'm going to have to hold the rock and also examine, yes? So like I said, pick a date in the month that you're going to do this regularly, all right? We're going to imagine that this is my breast, and best to do it first looking in the mirror. You want to know what your breasts look like, how the tissue looks, how the skin looks, how they... everybody's breast is not going to be so perky like this. Remember that. But just for this demonstration purposes, this is how it looks, okay? But if breasts come in different sizes, if your breast is bigger, it is better to lie and examine yourself. First, look in the mirror. Be sure that they may not be symmetrical, but whatever is normal for you, recognize and know that that's normal for you still. You have to know what is normal first. Then what you're going to do is, imagine I decided to lie down, okay? So I'm going to be lying down, and then what I'm going to do, so imagine my hand is up here. Imagine my hand is still up there. It's easier to examine with your hand up here because it kind of flattens the breast tissue closer to your chest and allows you to feel for those lumps better. So imagine my hand is up there, but it's not. You're going to feel, what I do, I feel first above my clavicle. So everybody could feel their collarbone. This is called your clavicle. You could knock it sometimes. So you could feel in that pocket there. What you're feeling for there are swellings called lymph nodes, okay? You don't want to feel any lymph nodes there, but you're feeling to feel if there's anything enlarged or rubbery there. Most of us have no problems there. Then what you're going to do with your hand extended like that is to feel in your armpit. Again, feeling for any swellings or any rubberiness, any lumps that are not there. That's feeling for the lymph nodes, okay? Then you're going to come now closer to your breast tissue. So again, with your hand up like that, because we want to flatten it down as best as possible, your breast tissue extends all the way into your armpit. Some people have a lot of breast tissue there, some people don't have as much. But it's important to feel that breast tissue that is in your armpit as well. So you're taking 3 of these fingers, 4 of them, doesn't matter, and then you're just pressing along, and you're coming into your breast in that way. Then you come to the breast itself. Like I said, you're looking at it, you're making sure the skin is okay, you're making sure that the nipple hasn't gone in. So nipple retraction is another thing. If your nipple was out and it has now gone in, that is a problem. If it was in and it's now gone out, that is a problem. And then what you're going to come and do, once you come to the breast tissue, there are different ways of doing it. You can press around in a circular way around the breast tissue, moving all around, feeling your breast all the way around, feeling and making sure you can't feel any lumps. Or you can take it what we call quadrant by quadrant. So starting by the nipple and working your way out. And go in those 4 areas of your breast to be sure. Then afterwards, you're going to have a feel around the nipple and be sure that all of that is fine as well, okay? Put my rock back. Okay, so that's self-examination, and everybody can do that. And I encourage everybody to do that once a month to know what is normal for them. The other types of screening that you were talking about is a mammogram. So we encourage persons to screen from the age of 50 if they're of normal risk. So if you're of higher risk, remember those categories have a family history, have had breast cancer before, it's yearly screening. If you're 50 and above and have had low to normal risk, then it's every 2 years to do a mammogram. And as it relates to the mammogram, I don't know that there is any direct evidence that frequent screening with the mammogram causes cancer. A mammogram is an X-ray of the breast. So yes, it can be uncomfortable and it can be painful, particularly for more dense or bigger breasts, because you're squashing the breast to try and get pictures of the breast tissue. But at the end of the day, it is a necessary evil, so to speak, because it's going to allow us to detect breast cancer more early, or reoccurrence more early. Other ways of screening for breast cancer would include an ultrasound. Oh, I have a question, yes.
You said the bigger your breast is, the more pain you'll have when you're doing the mammogram, right? That's what you said? Well, I could tell you I had mine done years ago and I hardly got breast. That was more painful to me than anything else. So I thought the smaller your breast is, because she couldn't even get it in the machine. So.
Well, you see, pain is relative, and only you know your pain, yes? But the challenge with bigger breasts is that the breast tissue has to be squashed more thinly. That means applying more pressure and potentially more pain. So it also has to do with the technician and their capabilities as well, and getting the right pictures. It's not a painless procedure. It's uncomfortable. But like I said, it's almost necessary for what we're trying to achieve, which is trying to detect the cancer early, or detect any changes early, so that we can intervene earlier. So speaking now about what other screening modalities there are, what other ways we can screen for breast cancer. So we have ultrasound. So for younger persons, or again, people that have more dense breast tissue, we sometimes do ultrasound alone, or an ultrasound and a mammogram together to screen for any lumps or bumps. Another way is a breast MRI, so you can scan for the breast tissue, and that can look in more detail at the breast to look for lumps and bumps. So ultrasound, mammogram, and breast MRI. And it's up to your doctor to determine which one is best for you, yes, based on their clinical examination and discussion with you. Okay, so because it's painful, a lot of people want to know, man, I don't want any more of these. When can I stop doing my screens? That is on a case-by-case basis. And I would encourage you to speak to your physician if it is that you had one mammogram and you don't want any more, you don't want to go through that ever again. It's nothing that we force you to do, but it's important to have that conversation to say, well, this is not something that I want to do. Can I do something else to screen? Or I heard that a mammogram is painful. I don't want that, so I ain't going to the doctor anymore to even look at my breast, because I don't want to find out or know. Conversations are important. So don't be fearful. I would advise you to come and express that to your clinician and say, well, I understand that a mammogram is very painful. My breasts are very sensitive and I don't want to have that. Is there something else that we can do to investigate it? And we can have that conversation with you. As it relates to stopping, generally speaking, the advice is by the age of 74, if you've had normal mammograms up until that point and no family history, at that point we can decide, well, 74, 75, we can decide that we will no longer be doing the mammograms regularly. But again, it's a case-by-case discussion. Now, moving on to if you find a lump. So let's walk through, we've talked a lot about self-examination and what changes you may find. If you do find a change and you go to your doctor and you're examined and a lump is identified, then yes, we will send you for those tests and say the test came back and confirmed that the lump was there. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's cancer. Breast can be lumpy, and you have benign lumps, so non-cancerous lumps, and you have cancerous lumps. The next stage is finding out which type of lump that is, okay? Sometimes we can tell by examination that maybe it's a cystic type of breast tissue, and it's probably a lump not to be worried about. And people will know their breast as well and know that, okay, sometimes I get my breast feeling a bit lumpy and then it goes away. It tends to be a lump that persists that you want to definitely investigate. So the next step, if you find a lump, is testing that lump. And that test would involve taking a bit of a sample of that lump, and that's normally done under local anesthetic by the surgeon, and that tissue then goes off for testing. So that goes to the pathology lab for histopathology testing to determine if it is cancer. So a special doctor looks at it under the microscope, looks at certain changes of it, and, oh, thank you there. Looks at certain changes in it, and they will then determine if it is cancerous or not. If it looks like cancer, then more testing happens to determine how we can treat that cancer. So are there certain hormone therapies that we can use, different types of chemotherapy, different strategies? It's another process that now begins. So say you got the diagnosis of breast cancer, then that's where then you have more doctors and a bigger team now coming into play. So you'll have now the oncologist, the surgeon, your primary care doctor, who's going to come in now and have those conversations with you as to what the next steps will be. Depending on the extent of it, you may have the lump removed, so what we call a lumpectomy. And they may take out some of those lymph nodes that we were examining before, just to see if the cancer has spread into any of them or if it's just confined to that lump. Or you may choose to have a mastectomy, so where the breast tissue is removed totally. It depends on the type of cancer and how extensive it is based on the testing and the examination and the feeling of the opinion of the oncologist or the cancer doctor and the surgeon. Any questions so far?
Thank you. You mentioned about the lymph nodes. Is it possible or is it common for swollen lymph nodes to actually be lumps? Can lumps be located where your lymph nodes are?
So let me understand that. So is it possible for swollen lymph nodes to be cancerous lumps? That's what you're asking?
Yeah, or for lumps to be in the same region as your lymph nodes.
So anything's possible under the sun. As it relates to breast cancer, yes, I guess you can have a cancer in what we call the tail of Spence, so that breast tissue under your armpit. And yes, depending on where that is, that could mimic a lymph node. But either way, if you find any lump and you're not too sure about what it is, then come and get it checked. Your doctor may examine it and be like, okay, no, this is a lymph node, but still, if it's a lymph node, we still need to investigate that. Or, oh, this node feels like if it's in the breast tissue or it's somewhere else in the tissue, not a lymph node, we still need to investigate it. And those scans that I spoke of, so you wouldn't do the mammogram of the tissue under there. We may do an ultrasound or a CT scan to determine what that lump is there. Did that answer the question? Okay.
This is not a question. I just want to share something with you, right? It was in 1989. 1989, I think it was, when I had surgery done on my breast. I think it was my left breast. I can't tell now because the mark no longer there. It was like a little proud flesh, but it disappeared. It was Dr. Lowe who did the surgery many years ago. And they removed a lump from my breast, but it was benign. Benign means not cancerous, right?
That's right, yes.
Yes, they sent it off to Antigua to have it tested. Came back benign. Then I went to St. Martin. I was in my 20s at that time. I went to St. Martin and had the mammogram done. They would tell you how, it was painful because it was trying to get it in the machine, squeezing it. And it was okay and everything. So, but I never did follow up, to be honest, after that.
Say that part.
I never did follow up after that.
Oh.
I had no mammogram done since.
That's a lifetime ago. So you know what that means. You have to come and visit me for a paper and examination. Thank you for sharing that, though, because that gives you or reinforces what I'm telling you about. From detection of the lump to scanning and finding and confirming that lump to having the surgery to take out that lump, and then the histopathology or the tests in Antigua that in your case confirmed that it was a benign lump. But remember, in my talk I was saying that once you've had a lump and it's benign, it's important still to screen further, and more regular checks would be advised. Okay, so I'm gonna wrap up. As it relates then to treatment, so we talked about the surgical treatment, either lumpectomy, mastectomy. Then if it is cancer, having radiotherapy, so that's radiation directed towards the cancer to kill the cancer cells. You have hormonal therapy, so tablets that you can take which sort of pinpoint the cancer and allow your body to fight it and die. And then you have chemotherapy drugs, which again go in and they target those particular cancer cells that are replicating frequently and allow those to die. I've gone through it very quickly, but that in itself is a long and arduous process and can be quite taxing as well on the individual. You had a question, sir? Hey. Where the mic?
Yes. Can you advise on what kinds of food or types of food that I should eat to avoid, and when I say I mean like everybody, to avoid maybe developing your cancer or to help to at least keep it down? What kind of foods that we can eat?
So I can't say, I can say the fresher the food, the better, yes? What I would say to that, so like I said, your ultra-processed food, so your Fruit Loops, cereal, your Frosted Flakes, the more processes it has to go through, the less nutritious it is for you. So if you can eat oats instead, and you're looking at me like, oats, oh my gosh. I don't like oats either. If you can eat oats instead, or cornmeal porridge instead, or cream of wheat instead, something that is not, yes, without sugar, something that is not processed multiple times. If you can eat instead, if you wanted to have a potato, some chips, then say you wanted some fish and chips or something like that. Instead of buying the bag of frozen chips, you cut up your potato instead, and don't make that the norm, make that a treat. Instead of, let's say, instead of hot dogs, corned beef, those sort of things, you want to limit the amount of red meat that you're eating. You want to limit the amount of nitrates, so those processed foods have a lot of things put in them to preserve them as well. Again, there's evidence that wax and wane. So sometimes it's there and they say, okay, the nitrates, the things that in ham, hot dogs, corned beef to preserve the meat, sometimes it's said that they cause cancer. Sometimes then the evidence changes up and then they're like, it doesn't really, there's no evidence to show that it causes cancer. But what it's very clear the more wholesome your food is, the less steps it has to do to get to your table. So your eggplant that you grew in your garden, and you cut it up, saute it in your pan with some olive oil, and you bought some fish from a fisherman down the road, that is healthier for you than eating a hot dog and chips or chicken wings and chips that you don't know how it was processed or where it really came from. So eating more farm to table, less steps in between, that's the best bet. And it may sound hard, but being conscious about it is important. So instead of buying the iceberg lettuce at the supermarket, maybe buy the local lettuce instead, because you know that that will have more nutritional value than something that came from the US 6 weeks ago.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, they say, right, that I should eat more local stuff, like vegetables, fruits, them kind of thing. But what do the farmers put on these fruits and vegetables when they're growing? What pesticide do they use? That's the next question.
It's true. So, yes,
They
you have
all use it.
pesticides. But all farmers use, well, I can't say all farmers use pesticides, but even if you're getting your fruit and vegetables from overseas, unless, I guess it's organic, but then even if it's organic, meaning that they're certified organic and not using pesticides, by the time it comes here, the nutritional value has been depleted. So what I would say to that is try and be selective with where you're buying your fruit and vegetable. Grow your own if possible, and wash your fruit and
Because
vegetables well.
I learned here someday that nune, what you call that bush in the mango garden there, what it'll grow big. Is nune? No, not nune. Thin leaves. No, not moringa. The next one, the people, they boil it. A local person, she grows, she has a farm, and she use it and spray her plants. Neem bush. So that's a very good natural pesticide.
I've seen that too, yes. Neem is a natural pesticide.
What are some signs of breast cancer that men should look for? Like, is it the same thing as women?
So same thing as women. So change in the size or shape of the breast, an abnormal or a discharge from the nipple, because men shouldn't be having any discharge from the nipple, change in the skin quality, or a lump. So same thing as for women. Frozen fruit, foods. So frozen, relative to tinned, frozen is good, because they say, I don't know what the evidence is, but they say that once it's picked, they then rapidly freeze it, and that locks in more of the nutrition than, say, if it was tinned or shipped in refrigerated containers here. So frozen is not bad, actually. So if you had frozen fruit and veg, and you wanted to use that in your meals preparation, then that can be an option as well. But still, local is best.
Is it true that there's anything to do with the containers you cook your food in, so the pots and the plastic containers and things like that?
So yes, there was some evidence surrounding BPA, a chemical in plastic containers, that if the container was heated, then yes, that could increase the risk of cancer. So you'll see that you have BPA-free bottles and containers and different things like that, and they drive now to drink your water out of aluminum cans and what's not. So with regard to BPA, yes, that was an element. The challenge is, as life goes on, we kind of live in a continuum where people discover that these things cause cancer. So we just have to try and do what we can do to prevent it. if you can not microwave your lunch in a plastic lunch bowl and you can put it in a plate, the better. But if you can't and it happens that you do it maybe once or twice, it's not going to be the end of the world. That's good.
What about eating barbecue stuff? Do you think that can cause cancer? As there's a lot of smoke going in their meat.
So I know in Japan, there was a study done because there was a lot of incidents of stomach cancer in Japan, linking smoked meat and fish to stomach cancer. Smoking the meat is different to barbecuing the meat. Smoking is, you're putting it in a hut, so you're exposing it to the smoke from the wood, and it's there for a little while, and that in itself preserves it. The barbecue, now, in the way that we do it here in the Caribbean and in Anguilla, I'm not entirely sure. I know sometimes people say, oh, it's carcinogenic, all that charcoal that comes off of the chicken, you're burning the fat. To answer your question truthfully, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think there's any solid evidence to say yay or nay. What I would say is don't char your chicken till it's black, and then go and eat it. And don't eat it too often. Everything in moderation is the essence of the story. Any other questions? Oh. I don't know if...
One. It is said that using what we call the foil paper, the silver paper.
Using what, sorry?
The foil paper.
Okay.
They say that they have discovered that that can contribute to a lot of illness. Because when you heat it, it gives off chemical reaction. And sometimes people reheat things in that paper. You heat it and you use a part of it, and sometimes you heat it up again, on
You're
and
trying
on.
to conserve.
Well, I mean, but I have been hearing that can cause major problems. What sayest thou?
So again, follow the manufacturer's guidance because they know what limitations they have. They're going to caution you and kind of say this is a one-use product only for that reason, because they're not looking for you to go and sue them if it's then determined that you developed cancer as a result of that. That's their fallback in the situation. I've not seen any evidence to suggest it. I've heard of it, but I can't say that in my readings that I've come across any papers or documents to say that that is strong evidence to say if you reheat food items in foil paper multiple times or cooking with foil paper, that would be an increased risk. I know of recent times, talc baby powder. So Johnson & Johnson's talc baby powder, there was lots of evidence that suggested that ladies who used Johnson & Johnson baby powder had an increased incidence of ovarian and endometrial cancer. So that I could say there's evidence pointing towards that. So instead of the talc baby powder, you can use cornstarch or preferably none at all.
Also, they say be sure not to intake any of the foil, because little pieces have gotten off sometime.
Don't eat the foil.
And some people, it have happened, they said, and it says that doctors have even found it in people because it does not dissolve unless you pass it.
That's correct.
out.
It's not going to break down.
I want to ask about drinking bottled water. I heard increasingly, I know of a girl who developed breast cancer, and she said, well, she was doing something crazy. She said she'll just drink water, and the balance, she just leave it in her vehicle, and then she'll just go away, and then she'll come back and she'll drink it. And, I guess But I just tell you that because if you look at increasingly the bottle, the plastic is becoming very thin now. So they'll tell you that they have reduced the amount. I mean, so you don't know what is seeping into the bottled water that you are drinking.
Yeah, so they try and discourage persons from leaving the bottles of water in too much heat. Again, the chemical substances of the plastic, you're not too sure what kind of effects that will lead to later down. But if you look at it, we look at it now, modern day, we have bottled water, but let's look at it maybe 100 years ago, we didn't have purified water in the way that we did, and there were more parasites, people had more parasites, worms, died from malnutrition as a result of that. So sometimes it's striking that balance. So we get progress in one aspect, meaning that we have clean water, not water that's giving us germs, parasites, and what's not, but now just consuming that water in a safe way is important as well.
Okay, so recently, well, not recently, like
I hear.
4 years ago, I saw this label on this plastic bottle that I was going to buy, like one of those spray bottles, and it had this P65 warning. You know what that is?
P65
warning.
No,
okay, it's a small little warning that is say cancer and reproductive harm, and then it has some of the states of California, blah 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 blah. But it'll be on everything. Like if you just like read the labels, like anything that contains plastic or rubber, that warning is on it. So how serious?
I know what you're talking
warning?
about. So yes, in certain states in the U.S., they put this caution on certain plastic containers to say that there are particular elements contained in that plastic, again, for litigious regions, for legal reasons, so that people don't sue later. So California, that's, litigation law central, people sue a lot. So they put these warnings on so that when you buy the products, you know, okay, I'm taking this risk. I can't sue the company later down. But then that reinforces what we're saying. We don't really know what we're using. Yes, they've identified that, but when we go and we buy the bottles and they don't have on the warnings, what are we exposing ourselves to in the long term? So the important thing is do what we can do to limit those known risk factors. So like I said, not smoking, not drinking, exercising, eating right, not being overweight or obese, screening often, so doing your self-examinations once a month. If you're finding anything, going to your doctor so that we can review you. And if you're 50 and over, presenting to your doctor at least every 2 years if you're of normal risk, or every year if you're of higher risk, to have a mammogram done if you're of that age. Yeah.
Well, normally you use some water, but I use a filter, charcoal filter, so I don't buy the bottled water.
That's good.
Okay, so I wanted to ask, when people usually get diagnosed with cancer, or when they hear about cancer, the first thing they think of is like they're gonna die. What advice would you give to us for like family members or anyone who would have been diagnosed with cancer, but they're just focusing on the dying part?
Okay. So we as humans, we like to err on the negative. That's just how we are. You do an exam, you think about everything that you got wrong, and you think, oh, I failed that exam, I didn't get anything right, and you probably ended up doing well. So it's just human nature to focus on the negative. So from the perspective of advising the person if they have got that cancer diagnosis, like I said, cancer is not what it was 20 years ago, 50 years ago. Early detection is good, and if it has been detected early, there are lots of treatment options that are there. And really it is, what I like to say, one step at a time, sweet Jesus. So it's not about rushing forward and thinking, oh, I'm going to die, this is going to kill me, or I'm going to lose my hair, or I am going to waste away to nothing. I'm going to lose my job. My husband or my spouse is not going to love me anymore. Thinking of that doesn't help the situation. Actually, it probably can harm the situation because higher levels of stress, increased levels of cortisol, and other hormones that can promote cancer growth. So that's why it's important to have that conversation with your physician so that we can discuss what the next steps are going to be and really not casting your mind to a month down the road, just literally taking it one day at a time. Since we're in church, I like to say the Lord's Prayer says, give us this day our daily bread. It doesn't say give us this day our monthly or yearly or provide us for next year. It is just to get by today. So really and truly, it is that grace to get by in that moment, in that day. And like I said, having that support network, so if you're spiritual, your church members, your physicians, friends, and family who can be there for you to help you go through that as well. And then as it relates to if you know someone who has cancer and how you can be there for that person, everybody is different, and not everybody wants the same thing from an individual. But making yourself available is important. I think the first thing for us, you might get anxious, you might not know what to say, you might feel like I don't want to say the wrong thing and just hide away. But if you're close to that person, that's probably not the best thing to do at that point. Just letting them know that you're there for them is important. And then when they're going through the challenges with surgery and chemotherapy, actually helping them, not being just there in word, but in physical help as well. So you want me to go shopping for you? You want me to cook something for you? Let's go for, if you feel able, let's go for a little walk on the beach. Being that level of support as well is important. Oh, yes.
Thank you, Doc. I think if I look around, I'm the oldest here. I'm 74.
Oh.
And I'm happy that you released my mind that I'm free of cancer.
I didn't tell you that.
And the only concern in surgery that I had was thyroid removed in 2016 by Dr. Webster, but I haven't had an issue since. And just Monday, I've been to the clinic for a checkup, and I'm supposed to be back tomorrow. Not Monday, Thursday. I came, and I'll be back tomorrow. Anyway, I say that to say that some people say that thyroid, after you remove it, it comes back and it can be cancerous. So I don't even go there. I just live with it, 1 tablet per day and live by that.
I understand. So some people have that notion of, you know, I'm feeling good, I don't want to know what's going on. And to each their own. But I wouldn't necessarily encourage that notion of thinking, particularly if you're younger. I don't encourage it when you're older either, because if there's anything that is going to go wrong, it's better to catch it early than just be like, oh, I'm fine, nothing's wrong with me. I don't have to worry, I feel good. And if you feel good, it's likely that you are good. But doing your checks is very important, because some of these things, this is why we advocate screening, because some of these things, when they present and you actually start to feel unwell, or you find that it's a big lump, or that you're losing weight, or that you're having bloody discharge from the nipple, it's too late to do anything. And it's a worse position to be in when if you happen to be in that position. I see it. I've been a doctor for almost 13 years now. You see it where people are like, I wish I had. And nobody wants to be in that position. Knowing, worse yet, if you know, well, if I had done it earlier, maybe I wouldn't have to go through all of this. That's why I do what I do, so that you're aware of it and you can screen earlier. And that doesn't just pertain to cancer. We're talking about cancer because it's breast cancer awareness, but it pertains to diabetes. It pertains to hypertension. Things that are a lot more common in the society today than breast cancer. You don't want to wait until you're getting symptoms of it. Well, first of all, hypertension is a silent killer, so you may not ever get any symptoms until you have a stroke or a heart attack or have kidney failure. So that's why it's important to go to the doctor and get your checks, get your blood pressure read, do at least yearly blood tests, particularly if you have a family history or you're older. Eat right, exercise, because when you start now to develop these signs and symptoms of any clinical condition, sometimes it's too late at that point in time. As it relates specifically to what you said, so screening, doing your thyroid test, important, so the blood test. You can also feel your neck to feel if you feel any lumps or bumps. And if any of those thyroid tests are abnormal, then we would send you for further scans and that sort of thing. But regularly visiting your doctor if you have any medical condition. I find here in Anguilla, everybody has a notion of, oh, I take my tablets, I don't need to see the doctor. But I ask people, I'm like, so your car, you just put gas in it. You don't take it to the mechanic to get checked or serviced or anything like that. We have to think about those things. You need to get young, old, and in between. You have to get checked, because at that point in time, we can then help and intervene at the stages that we would need to intervene.
Thank you. I have been checking, but since Doc came to the ministerial, to the government, I delete a little bit, but I have been regular before he came into the ministerial.
So you would do your checks with him regularly?
Yeah, yes.
So good, you're not as bad as I thought then. Yes. Oh. Sure.
For someone with breast cancer or cancer on a whole, should they eliminate animal products completely from their diet, red meat especially?
So I know, yes, some persons who have had cancer before, they modify their diets quite a lot to become more vegan-based. Again, meats nowadays, that's why I stress on eating more local, eating what you grow, because meats nowadays have a lot of hormones added to them to stimulate growth, a lot of antibiotics as well to prevent disease, and you will find that persons who have had cancer will shy away from commercially grown meats for that reason, because particularly hormones may stimulate cancer growth. Too much sugar as well can do that. Again, the evidence is not hard and fast and definitely there, but you will find persons who have had cancer and are survivors have modified their diet in that way to ensure that they're living better and hopefully cancer-free for longer. And it should be something that we all as people should adopt, being more mindful and probably not indulging in the chicken every day, having at least one meat-free day a week. That could be beneficial as well. Any more questions? All right, thank you very much, everyone.
Hi. Hailing from the picturesque island of Dominica, Arlene Filbert has been a beacon of strength and resilience throughout her journey.